Welcome, everyone. We will be starting the program in a moment, but before we do, may I ask everyone to make sure their electronic devices are silenced. Okay, so we'll just wait for Julie so she can come back. You can certainly greet your neighbors and say hello as we're waiting just for a couple of more people to arrive. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Lynn Weinstein, co-president of Temple Sinai, along with Betty Adams, who will be joining me in a few moments. And it's my honor, on behalf of our clergy, Rabbi Aviva Bass, student cantor Dan Geigerman, and our devoted musical accompanist, Dr. David McFarland, to welcome you to this evening of prayer and remembrance. Many of you who have been here at Temple Sinai for Yom Hashoah commemorations know that it is indeed a difficult time to remember the lives of those lost, but also to honor the heroism of the survivors and thank the liberators of the Shoah. This evening will be a combination of music, prayer, speaking, and memory in many ways. Before we go ahead, I'd like to introduce the folks who are joining Rabbi and Cantor on the Bima tonight. First, our keynote speaker, Dr. Jenny Frumer, my longtime friend, even though we're only 19 years old. And yes, folks, we did look alike until I found a chemical for my hair. We very much did. Reverend Paul Kane, rector of St. Paul's Episcopal Church. St. Paul's welcomed the Hebrew congregation of Delray Beach decades ago, and that's where we grew to be Temple Sinai here in this building. Additionally, I want to welcome Mayor Shelley Petrolia from the city of Delray Beach, Commissioner Julie Casal, Reverend Juanita Bryant Good from Cross Ministries, member of our board, Mitch Katz. There are other folks that we will introduce later. State Senator Lori Berman will be joining us later, and a representative from Congresswoman Frankel's office will speak with you on behalf of Congresswoman Frankel as well. Before we get started, one more reminder to make sure your cell phone devices are silenced. And now I want to slowly introduce the members of our congregation, along with my co-president, Betty Adams, who are going to slowly come to the candle lighting. But you're probably asking me why a scroll, a Torah scroll, is sitting here on the bima. It's not a worship service in which we're reading Torah. Let me respond to that. This is Torah scroll number 1203. It is one of the more than 1,500 Czech memorial sacred scrolls which constitute the treasures that were looted by the Nazis from the period 1939 to 1945, from the communities in Bohemia, Moravia, Slovakia. They were then cared for in Czechoslovakia for a period of time. Now the Westminster Scrolls Trust in London, in UK, has become responsible for maintaining this scroll and its brothers and sisters throughout the world. We are so grateful to be responsible for this scroll in many ways. Number one, this is the scroll from which we frequently read on Shabbat and holidays. Equally important, this is the scroll from which every one of our bar and bat mitzvah students read when they are called to the Torah for the first time. We do not own this scroll. It is on permanent loan to this congregation, as all of the other orphan scrolls and known scrolls are on loan throughout the world. And that is why this survivor is part of our remembrance this evening. Now it's my pleasure to call up by name Tom Gabor, Danielle Gabor, and their daughter Carol. Please, Betty, please join them here. Also, Belle Brody. Okay. Rosie Sapadin. Please come up here. Folks, say hello to the Temple Sinai survivors who were able to be here with us tonight. Carol is a first-generation child of survivors. Turn around, folks, and face the congregation, please. There are other members of our congregation who are survivors that are not able to be here. But these folks will be lighting candles. And then Betty and I and Rabbi Aviva will be lighting candles as well. The Gabor family will light one candle. Rosie Sapadin will light a candle, and Belle Brody will light a candle. Betty will be lighting candles in honor of members Steve Freed, Joe Koch, and Harry and Ursula Reiner. I am going to be lighting candle in memory of the Temple Sinai members who are no longer with us, but they were strong members of this congregation, including my friends Fred Seiler and Sally Tenser. And Rabbi Aviva will be lighting the final candle in memory of all the unnamed victims of the Shoah. Please listen to Cantor Dan.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
The following reading was found written upon a scrap of paper, and it was found between two wooden beds. Gertrude is my name. There were many Gertrudes in our town, but in this long, cold barracks, there is no Gertrude but me. There is an Anushka here who comes from the Ukraine, and Gittel from Poland, Helen from Germany, and Grazia from Greece, and a continuing long list of those who once were women. What cruel, callous magnet drew us here from all corners of the continent and cast all of us into one mold? Wooden shoes and a dress of coarse fabric, a blanket to cover our body in a cold that knows no mercy, and a tin plate and a spoon that never could hold enough to satisfy the incessant, gnawing hunger. The past is becoming blurred, replaced only by the present, today, right now, this moment. The sewing machine, a portion of foul soup, the lineup where some of us collapse and from which others are plucked away to disappear, accompanied by shrieks and dogs, and no one knows where. The present fills all of our existence. About the future, no one speaks, and with difficulty, I remember the past. Oh, how short-sighted and innocent we were. We rejected the advice to abandon the homeland, to emigrate to the distant east, and we hid ourselves from the signs, no Jews allowed. Our ears we sealed from hearing the hateful speeches, for they were just words, and what can words really accomplish? With all our might, we wanted to believe that if only we would humble ourselves a short while, the storm would pass and be no more. Even after the night of the burning synagogues, when the streets were covered with shattered glass, we continued hoping for the best, since nothing worse could come to pass, and after all, everyone was cultured there.
brennt. Unser Rohr im Städtelnebel brennt. Diese Winden mitgegossen, Riesen brechen und zerblosen, schaute noch die wilde Flammen, als Rumsturm brennt. Und steht und guckt, soll sich mit verlegter Hand. Und steht und guckt, soll sich sie unser Städtel brennt. Es brennt, Brüder, es brennt. Unser Rohr im Städtelnebel brennt. Schoben scheuen die Weirzungen, das ganze Städtelei geschlungen. Und die böse Winde hunzen, unser Städtel brennt. Und steht und guckt, soll sich mit verlegter Hand. Und steht und guckt, soll sich sie unser Städtel brennt. Es brennt, Brüder, es brennt. Die wir aus den Gorachen gebänt. Ob du Städteli sagt teure, nehmt die Kehl und löscht das Feuer, löscht mit euer Regenblut, beweist, dass ihr das kennt. Steht nicht Brüder, oder soll sich mit verlegter Hand. Steht nicht Brüder, löscht das Feuer, unser Städtel brennt.
Dr. Jenny Frummer currently serves as the director of the Now for Holocaust Survivors initiative at Morse Life Health System. She is the retired CEO of Alpert Jewish Family Service in West Palm Beach, Florida. Jenny is licensed as a clinical social worker and mental health counselor and earned her PhD in human capital management from the College of Business at Bellevue University. She is co-founder and officer on the board of the International Center of Multi-Generational Legacies of Trauma. Dr. Frummer set the standards for person-centered trauma-informed care, programming and services for Holocaust survivors nationally. She developed some of the original training programs used by other family services throughout the country and assisted in the establishment of the initial model for Jewish Federations of North America's federally funded grant programs to assist Holocaust survivors. She was honored to provide testimony on behalf of the Holocaust survivors in Southeast Florida to Ambassador Kennedy, Special Envoy for Holocaust Issues for the U.S. Department of State. Jenny has more than 38 years of leadership in established standards program, including immigration and resettlement. Yes, we worked on the Russian resettlement program in the last century. She also has mental health first aid as a primary knowledge base and has assisted in providing enhanced companionship for older adults throughout South Palm Beach, Central Palm Beach, North Palm Beach County. Jenny is currently adjunct faculty at Fordham University as well as Lynn University here in our own community. She teaches courses in public administration, nonprofit leadership, business, and human resources. Many other aspects of her life include certification in geriatric counseling as well. Jenny has presented extensively, both nationally and internationally, on several different topics, including the unique needs of Holocaust survivors and the multi-generational transmission of trauma. Dr. Frumer maintains a private practice offering counseling to Holocaust survivors and their second and third generation family members. She has written and published articles on a wide array of topics of interest to all of you, and you'll have a chance to speak with her for a few minutes following this evening's presentation. Dr. Frumer was born in Zimbabwe, grew up in South Africa until 1982, when she emigrated to the USA. She currently resides in Royal Palm Beach with her husband and also my friend, Neil Newstein. Jenny?
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Lynn, for that really, really warm welcome and introduction. We do go back a long way, and it is truly just such an honor and a pleasure to be here this evening. So in case you didn't hear me, I wanted to say thank you, Lynn, for that warm introduction. It's such an honor to be here this evening. As we gather to remember this Yom HaShoah, to commemorate the 6 million Jews murdered and all the others who were killed as a result of the Nazi regime, I want to recite the words of Elie Wiesel. While not all victims were Jews, all Jews were victims. Jews were destined for annihilation solely because they were born Jewish. They were doomed not because of something they had done or proclaimed or acquired, but because of who they were, sons and daughters of Jewish people. As such, they were sentenced to death collectively and individually. Holocaust survivors know and live with the knowledge that it could have been them. I'm also reminded that while we are here to remember those who perished, we also honor those who live and recognize our responsibility to care for them and their families and to make sure that their lives are lived out with dignity. Morse Life Health System is a 50-acre campus in West Palm Beach, housing for independent living, assisted living, memory care, short-term rehabilitation, and long-term care. Morse Life also provides services out in the community and serves approximately 3,600 older adults, including Holocaust survivors, each day. Morse Life launched a campaign to raise private funds after hearing a demographic population study of the Jewish community in 2019, where they heard that at least 2,000 Holocaust survivors in Palm Beach County are living in poverty. I do have a personal story about my commitment to working with Holocaust survivors, but I'm really here to tell you about the Now for Holocaust Survivors initiative. I came out of retirement and to design and implement the Now for Holocaust Survivors initiative at Morse Life in January 2020, just before the start of the pandemic. Before I describe Morse Life's health system, Now for Holocaust Survivors initiative, and specifically how we are helping survivors and their families, I'm going to take the liberty of providing just a brief history of services to Holocaust survivors in our community in Southeast Florida. In 1995, Florida was the first region in the country to receive funds from the German government for organizations to provide care to Holocaust survivors, administered through the Claims Conference. The general definition of a survivor is someone who is displaced by the Nazi regime through the years 1938 to 1945. I was the chief operating officer then at Elbert Jewish Family Service, and we were the fiscal agent for all 4 JFSs in Southeast Florida. And we received, when it was announced, we received 300 calls in 2 days from Holocaust survivors. They were anxious, they needed help, and wanted to understand what these funds would mean to them. The need was great back then, but it is even greater now. Morse Lives Now for Holocaust Survivors Initiative is helping our oldest survivor, who Kenahora is 104 years old, and our youngest is 82. No one knows exactly how many survivors are in the USA, and it's estimated that there may be as many as 120,000 who survived the Shoah. It is a myth that all Holocaust survivors will be gone in 5 years. While it is unfortunately true that many are dying every day, we have come to learn that there were many more than we ever imagined who were children during the Holocaust. While many may have not survived the concentration camp and death camps, thousands upon thousands were physically hiding, living in the forest, and many more thousands were fostered by families, and unfortunately not always righteous families, and many more assumed other identities. We often lament, particularly us professionals, about the term that has been coined, the conspiracy of silence, which refers to the 50 years, 5 decades, after World War II. It was not until Schindler's List by Spielberg that the doors opened for many survivors to feel that they could speak freely about the atrocities they experienced and witnessed. Usually, when they arrived on our shores as refugees, they were snubbed and looked down upon. They were not called survivors back then, or considered heroes. They were the greeners, the refugees to be avoided. They dressed differently, they spoke European languages, some of them very guttural, and we were afraid of them. It was a challenge to look them in the eye as we learned more about Hitler's undertakings. They too were overly cautious themselves and tried so hard to become Americanized very quickly. They were grateful to Hayes for lending them out of the DP camps and allowing them to be reunited with family. They literally did not have the language or the ability to speak words of what they had witnessed. Besides, they were often given the general message that no one would believe them anyway. Of course, I'm generalizing. However, our communities collectively told them to get over it, and we told them that they were safe now, and we told them that they should get on with their lives. And most of them did. We collectively may have done our brethren and traumatized weary parents and grandparents an injustice. So you may ask, why do we call this the Now for Holocaust Survivors Initiative? Because back then we didn't or couldn't or didn't know better, but we do know differently now. I mentioned that we don't know exactly how many Holocaust survivors there are because the younger survivors were more easily integrated and acculturated, and generally they have never applied for reparations or compensation, and so they go undocumented. However, they often bear the scars of what they witnessed: unintentional abandonment and increased triggers and symptoms of anxiety as they age. South Florida is the second largest population of survivors and the fastest growing demographic of child survivors, those who were children during the Holocaust. The median age is only 90. 50% of Holocaust survivors are not yet 90. 68% live alone, 42% live in poverty, which is higher for Russian-speaking survivors who, of course, came to the USA later in life and as such never qualified for Social Security. Survivors tend to feel more isolated than their peers, and because of years of malnutrition, illnesses that never properly cured, or physical injuries that never received medical attention, they tend to have a higher acuity of needs. Morse Life is helping survivors now, and many of the older survivors still live in the shadows, afraid to be identified as a target. Especially today, our Russian-speaking survivors. The Now for Holocaust Survivors initiative is unique in that not only can we help the Holocaust survivor, but we can also help the spouse of a Holocaust survivor who may not be a Holocaust survivor. By helping their spouses with services, we provide the Holocaust survivor with the support and care that makes their lives easier, caring for an ill spouse. We have also helped the children of Holocaust survivors when needed. The Now Initiative works closely with the Jewish Family and Children's Services to coordinate care and offer the additional, expanded, and supplemental services when Jewish family service funds are not available to help the survivor, a spouse, or the child of a survivor. Our approach, as part of the Now for Holocaust Survivors initiative, is from a trauma-informed framework. We want to ensure physical and psychological safety, in addition to highly qualified nursing professionals and caregivers who have received training in person-centered trauma-informed care. Our licensed clinical social workers provide trauma-informed counseling. The Now Initiative is part of a larger health system, and professionals have immediate access to over dozens of services and programs within the Morse Life system of care. Just as examples, some of our services include basic care such as food preparation and delivery, Meals on Wheels, assistance paying for dental care and other services not easily available through Medicaid or Medicare. Medications are sometimes paid for as are medical copays. Palm Beach County is really a hard place to find affordable and safe housing. So we assist with rent and utilities at times. While Morse Life has such a beautiful campus, we try our best to keep survivors in their own homes and will pay for services such as personal care, assistance with dressing, transportation to grocery stores, chore service, as well as having someone bring them to a doctor's appointment. The Now Initiative is a strong advocate for survivors and will follow the care into hospitals, for example. One of the more compelling and concerning areas for our work with Holocaust survivors is end-of-life care. Thankfully, Morse Life has palliative care and hospice care. These services are trauma-informed, which is generally needed as survivors' end-of-life issues are complex. Each survivor is professionally assessed, and a plan of care is developed to meet their changing needs over time. The Now Initiative conducts ongoing outreach efforts to let the Holocaust survivors know that we are here to help and will coordinate services with Jewish Family Service. Yesterday, we had a luncheon for 50 Russian-speaking Holocaust survivors. It was one of the first times that we actually had a gathering in person. It was just remarkable. We must keep Holocaust survivors connected to our community and support them. You will hear about many activities and events around the country as we emerge even more from the pandemic. A few words about the current events in Eastern Europe. Specifically, Russia's invasion, which has unleashed significant devastation worldwide, but for Holocaust survivors in the United States, especially those from Ukraine and the surrounding countries, the crisis has cost many lives and is horrific and has been overwhelming to Russian-speaking survivors. Even though the current situation is not specifically Jewish related, they are reporting to us that they are not able to sleep at night, and that the current war is bringing up severe trauma and triggering from their wartime experiences. What they watch on the news terrifies them, and they are taken back in time, being reminded of having to find shelter from bombings. Many are hounded by painful memories of cold and starvation, and we only have to watch the social media and the media on TV to know that if we turn those pictures into black and white from color, they would be almost the same visions. Many Russian-speaking Holocaust survivors in our community still have family members in Ukraine who are once again being evacuated from countries of origin. The separation of families, and in particular children who are caught in these traumatic events, is excruciatingly painful for Jewish Holocaust survivors to witness. It is evident that Russian-speaking survivors who are notoriously afraid of help and asking for help at the best of times have been driven even further into the shadows and will remain under the radar for fear of being re-victimized and unduly targeted by perceived notions that they may be pro-Russian because of their Russian accents. Each and every day, I am honored to help survivors and stand in awe of their resilience and their fortitude. I'm also really excited to share that our work with Holocaust survivors has expanded, and we have heard over and over from survivors that we must never forget. Not only do they want themselves to tell the story, they want us to tell their stories. And even more specifically, they want to make sure that children, well, people of all ages, but especially children, learn how quickly hate can impact society. In December, a small but mighty volunteer organization, Next Generations, merged with Morse Life, and we launched the Holocaust Living Learning Experience. One of the ways in which Morse Life is responding to the critical issues of an increase in hate and bigotry is to teach lessons from the Holocaust. It starts with educating children and youth. Children learn to hate. They are not born with hatred, prejudice, and bigotry. We collectively continue to teach kindness, tolerance, and empathy so that children will learn to embrace differences and treat one another with civility. Together, we have a unique model that brings retired educators, students, and Holocaust survivors as living history into classrooms in schools and college campuses. This model is being considered for replication across other counties in Florida. Last year, 18 schools participated in a butterfly project and painted 28 ceramic butterflies, which will be affixed to a huge bronze tree. This 24-foot high, with a huge 24-foot wide canopy, will be an icon and center point for the Holocaust Living Learning Experience on the Morse Life campus. It will be open to the public. The sculptor is Bruce Gendelman, whose grandfather perished in the Holocaust. This great bronze sculpture, 2 stories high, will be dedicated in January on the day of International Remembrance Day. This year, we have 80 schools participating as part of the Palm Beach County School District, and children's students will be painting 9,000 tiles with butterflies. Butterflies represent hope, resilience, and the opportunity to grow and change. All of these tiles will be displayed in the courthouse as part of a mosaic. In addition to this exciting event, you are really one of the first groups to hear what else we're doing, which has been a vision which, as of last week, is real. It's a reality. Morse Life has launched a healing and education center. that will house the Holocaust Living Learning experience and will also offer non-medical programs on site, virtually, and in the community. Programs that are focused on wellness, support groups and workshops for child survivors, and for those who are children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. We will offer bereavement groups and caregivers groups and support groups for parents and siblings who are struggling with a family member who has a mental illness, art therapy, music therapy, meditation, yoga, and mindfulness, a volunteer Bikur Cholim program, Mishparech circles, seminars for couples who wish to enhance their communication, including with adult children and grandchildren, all kinds of seminars in aging and resilience. We will also be working with businesses around trauma-informed principles to enhance their employee and customer services. We can also offer retreat space. Most exciting is that we're going to have space for a labyrinth. I'm told I pronounced that wrong. It's labyrinth. It's a walking circle that offers healing, a quiet place to connect the mind, the body, and the inner spirit. It's been used for centuries. Labyrinths boost healthy life and recovery. It is a stress reduction problem-solving mechanism. We may not always be able to cure, but we can work to heal. I am so honored to be here this evening to memorialize and stand in solidarity with all who perished and to honor all of those among us, our Holocaust survivors, who have taught us to be kind and tolerant, resilient and compassionate towards one another. Thank you.
שלא ייגמר לעולם, החול והים, רשרוש של המים, מרק השמיים, תפילת האדם, החול והים, רשרוש של המים, מרק השמיים, תפילת האדם. Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, החול והים, רשרוש של המים, מרק השמיים, תפילת האדם.
The scrap of paper that was found between the two wooden beds continues. And it is just a scrap, a fragment, and so it ends in the middle of a sentence. We can only imagine what happened to Gertrude at that point. She says, "Alas for the blind fools who did not know what the future held. It was on a Friday night. We were sitting in the salon, and my crippled, wheelchair-bound father, Manfred, was singing along with the choir being broadcast on the radio. Suddenly, the door was broken down, and they entered, black uniforms and shining boots. They shoved Father into an adjoining room, and they commanded us to pack a suitcase within 10 minutes. Where you are going is safe and sheltered, they said. Hurry, hurry." Later, only interrupted images and fragmented sounds. An isolated rifle shot, the vacant stares of the neighbors, the frozen city square, a mother's farewell cry, the filthy truck, the boxcar with not a breath of fresh air, the long barracks with nothing but wooden beds, and the sour-faced capo. Our hair they shaved when they brought us into the barracks, and in place of the six-pointed yellow star, they burned a blue number into our arms. And from that moment, only sewing and sewing from morning to night without rest, day after day, hats, coats, shirts, and trousers appropriate for the shining boots. At first, I still asked, why? Why me? Why us? Why now? But I stopped asking. The question is more painful when there is no answer. Tonight, they will take all of us to another location. This is what the capo told us, and she did not add another word, but her face was gloomy. I am writing all of this on scraps of paper, and if a human being should ever find them, perhaps he will have the strength to ask for a reason why there was no... We take a few moments of silence.
It's my honor at this time to invite State Senator Laurie Berman, as well as Tisha Buddle, who is here as a representative from Congresswoman Lois Frankel's office. Folks, Laurie Berman, and then Tisha.
Is Tisha here? Oh, are you going to come up? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I'm really honored to be with you here tonight for this very solemn day of Yom HaShoah. I am proud that both of my children went on the March of the Living, and my mother also went on the March of the Living. And I think what this day is all about and what that trip is about is us recognizing that we need to bear witness and that we need to talk about this and we need to acknowledge it. And certainly, given the state of the world today, I see the Ukrainian flags in front. It's important for us to understand how troubling what happened in the Holocaust was. And one of the great things about my children being able to go on the March of the Living was that they were able to be with survivors, and there's not that many survivors left, and certainly it's going to be harder and harder for survivors to be able to go on the March of the Living. So all of us have to make sure, and it's our obligation to make sure that the world understands what happened. A few years ago, we saw a situation at Spanish River High School where the principal said that he would not teach the Holocaust because there were opposing views that believed that the Holocaust never happened. And we can't ever allow something like that to go on. And it's shocking that here in Palm Beach County, that issue arose. And it's all the more reason why we need to have events like this and continue to get the word out. So thank you for including me in this program this evening. I always do a Holocaust Remembrance Memorial Proclamation in the Florida Senate, and very often we're there this time of year. This is our every other year where we're not there. And I always get up on the floor and talk about how important it is for all of us, and know that I will continue to do that as your representative in the Florida legislature, and that as personally and through my family, we will continue to make sure that everyone knows that the Holocaust happened and that it is something that we must all bear witness to. So thank you so much for having me here with you this evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tisha Buttle, and first and foremost, thank you for allowing and inviting me today. If the Congresswoman could be at multiple places at once, she would, but yeah. She says, "Dear friends, today on Yom HaShoah, we remember the 6 million Jewish men, women, and children that were murdered during the Holocaust. I am also thinking of survivors like Piotr, who at age 16 fled Ukraine to escape the Nazis, and now at age 96 has fled Ukraine once again to escape the Russians. Unfortunately, Piotr is not alone in experiencing a second hate-fueled expulsion from his homeland. Last November, I introduced a bill to honor Benjamin Ferencz, the last living Nuremberg prosecutor, with the Congressional Gold Medal. Mr. Ferencz brought 22 Nazi officials to justice during the Nuremberg trials and has continued to be an outspoken advocate for human rights throughout his long and storied career. The push to award Mr. Ferencz with his honor has bipartisan support in the House of Representatives, including 263 co-sponsors from both sides of the aisle. Yesterday, the Anti-Defamation League, or ADL, released a harrowing report that details a troubling rise in anti-Semitism in the United States. According to the report, ADL tabulated 2,717 anti-Semitic incidents throughout the country in 2021, which is a 34% increase from 2020, and the highest number the ADL has recorded since it started tracking these cases in 1979. If never again really means never again, then we must recommit to our fight against anti-Semitism, hatred, and bigotry wherever and whenever it rises. Thank you.
The very last, so richly, brightly, dazzling yellow. Perhaps if the sun's tears could sing against a white stone, such a yellow is carried lightly way up high. It went away, I'm sure, because it wished to kiss the world goodbye. The very last, so richly, brightly, dazzling yellow. Perhaps if the sun's tears could sing against a white stone, for For 7 weeks I've lived in here, pent up inside this ghetto. But I have found my people here. The dandelions call to me, and the white chestnut candles in the court. Only I never saw another butterfly. The very last, so richly, brightly, dazzling yellow. Perhaps if the sun's tears could sing against a white stone, the butterfly was the last one. Butterflies don't live in here.
I'm going to invite our member Mitch Katz to introduce the members who are here from the city of Delray Beach.
Thank you. We had a very great resolution passed by the city of Delray Beach recently, and it's thanks to Commissioner Casal, Julie Casal wants to come up, who introduced this resolution and obviously passed unanimously by our commission and signed by our mayor, Mayor Sheila Petrolia. So you want to come up and, both of you, or one at a time, however you want to do it. We'll start with Commissioner Casal.
Thank you. Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me here. My daughter wanted to be here tonight, but she's on a school field trip. My daughter has been watching the atrocities unfold in Ukraine, and she's been very impacted. In fact, she said to me, all they have is the kindness that people offer them. What can we do? So she began giving out these flags to people who donate and collecting money. And you all were so kind to offer her the opportunity to use your parking lot, and we did a drive-through donation. So first and foremost, thank you so much. Without a working definition of anti-Semitism, we really can't address the problem. So I was really honored when Mitch, there you are, excuse me, requested that we accept the working definition. And I feel like it's a step in the right direction. We all know anti-Semitism is a global problem. It's said that sunlight is the best disinfectant, so the more light that's shown on the bigotry of anti-Semitism, the better. In the 30s and 40s, information traveled much more slowly, so it was possible to suppress the truth about death camps and civilian executions, anti-Semitism, and the like. Many of the Allied soldiers I read who liberated the camps were horrified by what they saw. And the atrocities perpetrated against the Jewish people inspired Professor Raphael Lemkin to coin the term genocide. In 1948, 152 nations signed on to a treaty that made genocide an international crime. And that was the first human rights treaty adopted by that newly formed United Nations. And the message at the time was loud and clear. And I think you said it, never again. Yet here we are. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. Genocide is happening right now. I mean, you can turn on your TV and watch it on CNN, MSNBC, and sometimes even on Fox News. And there's no excuse. No excuse for anti-Semitism, no excuse for genocide. Yet we are relegated to watch this helplessly every single day. And, you know, for me, the Ukrainian people need only to look at the remarkable success of the Jewish people in rebuilding their lives after suffering such atrocities. So for me, the best way to remember the atrocities that we group into the term Holocaust is not to forget. And I thank you all every day for working in that effort. The last time it was the Jewish people, this time it's the Ukrainian people, and we don't know who's next. So I thank you for keeping these issues alive, for fighting complacency, and for allowing me to join you here this evening. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It is with great honor to be here before you, to be able to present the resolution that we have for you in remembrance of the Holocaust. And we do that with all of our heart and with special people in mind. I mean, I have to tell you, my heartstrings were tugged as we were learning about Gertrude's last memo to this world. It just takes everything inside of me to keep me from actually breaking down and crying, because I can't imagine being her. And there were so many. So if we don't remember them, it can happen again. It is happening again, as the Deputy Vice Mayor just spoke of. But we have to keep pumping the information out. Times are different. We can get the message out. It's quicker, and we need to do just that. So this city is stepping up into that position to be able to make sure that we're backing what you all are doing here, and we thank you so much for that. I have the easiest job. I just signed the paper. It was these two wonderful people that accompanied me up here, Mr. Mitch Katz, the Deputy Vice Mayor, and she just earned that title, by the way, so she's a commissioner, but she's also the Deputy Vice Mayor, Ms. Casal, brought it to our attention. So it was, I'm in the easy position right now, but thank you very much. It's an incredible honor to be here before you and to be representing this beautiful town that we call Delray Beach. Thank you.
We are fortunate here in Delray Beach that we have both government official support as well as interfaith support and solidarity with one another. And so I'd like to recognize Reverend Juanita Good and Reverend Paul Kane and ask if either would like to just say a few words. I don't know if you've prepared anything, but if you would like to address those who are here. I know that some of you, some of your congregants are here as well.
Thank you. It is really humbling. This is my first remembrance service to participate in, and first time to even learn about the Living Walk, or is that the right? March of the Living. And it is, I think, horrific that it is still happening today, and that I think we have not done a good job of educating people about the Holocaust, so that here, so many years later, it is continuing to happen in our streets and overseas. And we must make a commitment to remember and to share with others. I am being convicted, and wanting to share and make sure that more come and share next year in this service, because we do need to remember, because that is the only way we're going to begin to change our hearts and change. Y'all hearts are already in the right place, but we want to change the hearts of those who still have hate, allowed hate to grow in their hearts. And we want to plant the seeds to grow love and kindness. So thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Good evening. Thank you, Rabbi, for the opportunity to speak on behalf of not only myself, but the entire church family of St. Paul's Episcopal Church here in Delray Beach, and to assure you that we stand in solidarity with our good friends here at Temple Sinai, with our Jewish brothers and sisters around the world, and with people of goodwill around the world, in remembering those who lost their lives in the Holocaust, for those who live with the scars as survivors, and we continue to pray that people of goodwill all over the world will stand vigilant, that we will continue to remember, so this will never, ever happen again. May their memory be for a blessing.
And now I'd like to ask those who are able to do so to please rise for the last few concluding prayers of our service tonight, starting with the El Malei Rachamim prayer to honor those victims of the Shoah.
El Malei Rachamim Shochen Mamromim Amse Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina Im Kedoshim Utehorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmo 6 million Achenu ve'achiotenu Shenehergu al Kedushat Hashem Ba'al harachamim Yastirem eseter knafav leolamim Bitzror hachayim et nishmatam Adonai hu nachalatam Ve'yanuchu b'shalom al mishkavam Ve'nomar Amen.
Fully compassionate God on high, to our 6 million brothers and sisters murdered because they were Jews, grant clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold them in the embrace of your wings. Secure their souls in eternity. Adonai, they are yours. May they rest now in peace. And let us all say, Amen. Amen. And now for the Kaddish L'Yom Shoah. This is the Shoah Kaddish written by survivor Eli Wiesel. Yit Gadol,
Auschwitz,
V'yit Kadash,
Lodz,
Shemei Rabbah,
Honar,
Be'ama Divara Chirute,
Babi Yar,
V'yamlich Machute,
Mednik,
V'chayechon Uv'yomechon,
Birkenau,
Uv'chaye D'chol Beit Yisrael,
Kovno,
Ba'agala Uv'izman Kariv,
Janowska,
V'imru Amen.
Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam U'Olmei Almaya.
Yit Barach V'yishtabach,
Theresienstadt,
ויתפאר ויתרומם,
Buchenwald,
ויתנשא ויתהדר,
Treblinka,
ויתעלה ויתהלל,
Vilna,
שמי דקודשה בריחו,
Berichu, Bergen-Belsen,
לעילה,
Mauthausen,
מן כל ברכתה ושירתה,
Dachau,
תושבחתה ונחמתה,
Minsk,
דאמירן בעלמה,
Warsaw.
ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
יהי שלום הרבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. Hatikva means the hope, and it is the name of the anthem for Israel, for the state of Israel. And so we end our service tonight with hope and with an eye towards Zion, both the Jerusalem here in the world, but also the Yerushalayim Shel Mala, the world which we wish will come from the heavens down on the earth and create a time of peace. We now join in turning to the Israeli flag for the singing of Hatikva.
Kol od balevav penima, nefesh Yehudi homiya, ufatei mizrach kadima, ayin letzion Sophia. Od tikvateinu, hatikva bat shnot alpayim, להיות עם חופשי לארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. להיות עם חופשי לארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים.
Thank you all for joining us tonight.